Welcome to GreenWorks, now owned by Republic Services, previously as by JRM. This is a 50,000 foot square facility. What you see down below is recycling coming in the door. This facility processes about 24 tons of material an hour. Once the material comes into the building, the truck dumps it out onto what we call the tipping floor. And there's a bucket loader that then moves that material into a big pile so that the next truck can come in. That bucket loader also will then fill up what is basically a big barrel. It dumps it into the top of this barrel, and that sifts and turns until it settles down to the bottom, and that allows it to be a kind of consistent layer across the conveyor belt that comes out. And that conveyor belt then has generally about 6 people next to it, and that is, their jobs there are to take out things that are going to damage and break our machinery. So that first category of things is what we call tanglers. That could be anything that gets around our openly moving machinery parts, all right? So that could be ropes, chains, hoses, Christmas lights, plastic bags, absolutely a problem. So that's the first line of defense. We also take out things like barbells. Okay, we aren't looking for barbells here. That's scrap metal, so thank you, but no. And anything else that might become hangers are a definite menace. Metal hangers in particular, plastic, sure, but the metal ones don't give up easy once they get caught in the machines. So it goes past there, it then goes down and up another conveyor belt, at which point it is sorted by size. So cardboard is bigger than pretty much everything else. And so there's going to be rods with spinning discs inside of that big green box over there. And those rods are set fairly far apart, which means that as the stuff comes up, the cardboard goes over the top and paper, metal, and glass all fall through. The cardboard's going to go off to the side and everything else is going to come through here. And there's spiky bits, you can't see them there, but there's spiky bits there where the glass bottles are going to be broken on purpose. The plastic bottles just bounce off the top and the paper is fine, but the glass bottles are broken to pieces under 2 inches. So this is the beginning of our first rule of the recycling facility is if it's smaller than the width of a credit card, it will fall through my system and end up in my glass pile. So I do not want your caps separate from your bottles, for instance. I do not want utensils or straws or Keurig cups or little tiny individual ketchup containers, okay? So all of those things are too small. So that's your rule. Same thing with shredded paper. Shredded paper is good if you take it to Staples, if you take it to a shredding day. Very valuable material, all right? And they will recycle it because it has value. So just don't put it in your bin, please. All right. So then the glass falls through, and then the paper and bottles and cans are going to go a different direction. On the other side, there is a, we call a star sorter. It's at an angle, and it's got these spinning discs, but they're kind of star-shaped, and the paper fluffs up to the top because it's light. Bottles and cans are heavier and fall down and go a different direction. And then that paper goes off to one side and we just have the bottles and cans left. The bottles and cans are going to go up and over to this right-hand side, and they hit what's called an optical sorter, computerized optical sorter. It's a near-infrared laser, okay? And it is a light beam, and it's going to go across the conveyor belt, and it looks at each type of plastic and picks out each item at high speeds, picks out each item and says, okay, I recognize by your color and your transparency or lack thereof, you are a water bottle, you are a laundry detergent bottle. And it then takes that water bottle and it hits it with a puff of air, which is going to make it jump into a bin. If the water bottle is half filled with water and somebody put the cap back on, it is not going to jump into the bin, it's too heavy. So that puff of air doesn't do the job, and it will lay on the conveyor belt and miss its exit, which is sad for everyone, right? So if after that comes down, you'll see that there's another person sorting there. One of the things he's pulling out is called natural HDPE, high density polyethylene, and that is that kind of gallon milk jug that you get that's translucent, all right? That is a very useful material. It can be made into any colored plastic. So there have been times in the commodities market when that particular material was worth more per ton than steel, okay? When Texas had a storm that took out an oil rig for a few days and suddenly there was no virgin plastic available, and instead they had to buy recycled plastic to continue making plastic bottles, we were here for them. So. After the plastics are sorted out, the remainder of what's left is largely scrappy bits of plastic and metal cans. So the cans that are made of steel, we would call them tin cans. It's your soup cans or dog food cans. Those are, they have iron in them, which makes them attractive to a magnet. So while the conveyor belt is going one way, there's a magnet going the other direction, and that pulls the cans off and dumps them into a container. There's also what's called an eddy current, which is a temporary current created to pull out the aluminum cans. So we have a process for that as well. That aluminum certainly is valuable, just like I said, the steel as well. Lots of good uses for that. Car parts, bulldozers, you name it. They've all got these enormous second lives waiting for them. As I understand it, it takes 95% less energy to make a can into a can than to pull that material out of the earth and process it and make it into a can. The material of one kind, so that's maybe water bottles or paper, will all be fed down a conveyor belt to a baling machine. And that point of the baling machine is to crunch it all together, wrap a wire around it, and make it a bale, like a bale of hay, only it's a 2,000-pound bale of water bottles. At that point, we're gonna make walls out of them, like they're Legos or something, and that is to put them out of the way until we can fill up an 18-wheeler with it. At which point we will then ship it to a manufacturer or secondary processor who makes something new out of it. The goal is to take your material coming in the door and to make it available to manufacturers who want to make something out of recycled material. We want to see all of that material go on to be something useful in its next life. A number that most people don't expect, out of this facility, about 85% of what comes in the front door has a second life, goes on to a second life, all right? The 15% that we don't use is either things that we did not ask for, so we don't recycle shoes here, for instance. That's a donation item, okay? Or things that we really, really didn't want, like plastic bags, because they damage our machines. Or it's stuff that had food all over it, because our sorting system does not work well with things that have food in them or are covered in food. So we like things to come in empty, clean, and preferably dry.